And today we can talk about two kinds of languages. Now, just to fill in for the folks who have been kind of watching the video before we started the call, we've been talking about sensuality and sexuality, and that's one of the topics that can be discussed. But let's talk about it in the sense of two different kinds of languages. We have ordinary language, the language of our society, the language of our culture. And in that language, we have all kinds of do's and don'ts and things that we're supposed to do and things that we're not supposed to do, etc., like that. And then the Buddha talks in a Dhamma language. And so today I want to introduce you to the idea of Dhamma language, so you've actually been introduced to it many times before when we talk about the difference between ordinary mind, ordinary reality, and Dhamma. And the Dhamma language actually is referenced as liberating language, to where ordinary language is not. Now, in one of the pieces that I have seen from Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, he gives a long list of words and gives the distinction in the definition of those words as to whether they are um, noble or whether they're ordinary words. And in fact, we use the same words, but they have completely different definitions to them. An example of that would be the word love, in the sense that the word love has all of the stuff built in with culture. It has love in the sense of selling products. It has love in the sense of jealousy. It has love in the sense of two girls fighting over the same guy. We have love in the sense of sensuality and sexuality. So there's all kinds of stuff going on with love, to where in the Dhamma language, we don't even bother to use the word because we know how polluted it is. That in fact, the stuff that I was able to find for this talk, I could not find one of the old Dhamma talks that I've heard before, to where Bhikkhu Buddhadasa refers to ordinary language as balloon language, and the noble language, the Dhamma language, is actually called knife language. Why is one called balloon language and the other one is called knife language? Well, the balloon language is the kids love to play with balloons. They're lightweight, airy-fairy, can play around with them, no problem, until the balloon blows up in your face. Then you've lost it. To where knife language is a language that slices right through. It cuts down all of the fat away and gets right down to the reality of the situation. So Dhamma language is a language that we can use to actually see what it really is. Now, Bhikkhu Buddhadasa also mentions that ordinary language is a language of the world, and that we have a lot of different definitions of the world, the word world, and that the Dhamma language is actually much more mental. Now, I'd like to make an adjustment to that just a bit, in the sense that almost all of ordinary language is a language of perception and perceiving things and seeing things the way that we want them to be, as opposed to Dhamma language is seeing things actually the way they are, to see reality as it is with the senses, and to see things the way that they actually are without adding our own desires, wants, perceptions, etc., like that, so that we stop telling ourselves stories about reality and start allowing reality to be just the way that it is. So, most of you have been living your whole lives using ordinary language. And so often when I talk about things in a noble language and Dhamma language, we have a lot of questions. We're not quite sure what we mean and other things like that because it doesn't fit in with everything that we've heard and been taught and the way that we perceive reality. But the difference is that it's noble and it is liberating, and therefore it is worth the time and effort to put into it so that you can get the real value out of it. Then, in fact, one of the words that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa uses is the word work. Now, in the ordinary sense of the language of work, that means having a job, taking the kids to school, making your payments, doing all the kinds of stuff that's necessary for living your life, even to the point of the delusion of if you don't work, you don't eat. And yet, in the Dhamma language, the word work could actually be referred to most specifically as right noble effort to come out of all of the work that we do in the ordinary world and come to the effort of putting the effort in of stopping all of the work that we've been doing and just enjoy our lives. So, all of the words that we have been using with Dhamma would have these distinctions between ordinary and Dhamma language. One of them would be the word Buddha. Buddha is almost always in our culture used in an ordinary sense. We see the Buddha as statues. We refer to the Buddha as a historical figure and all of that kind of stuff. And yet we can see the word Buddha as a noble word in the sense that there is the possibility that you can come out of your trained nature, that the way that you've been living your lives has been trained. Your nature, your real nature, has been trained into a way of looking at the world, what you're desiring and wanting, and things like that. And when you begin to disregard all of that training and look at the way things actually really are, that's how we use the word Buddha, to see things the way that it really means. That in fact, the word Bu actually has the quality of awakening, to be awake, to look at what we're actually doing, to look at what we're actually seeing. Because if we can wake up to what we're seeing, wake up to what we're doing, we now have a choice. And that choice then would be the right noble effort to come out of our desire, come out of our delusion, to come out of our ill will, and to come into the state of being Buddha, just awakened. The same thing would be then true about the word Dhamma, that when we hear the word Dhamma, it's almost always referred to as the teaching of the Buddha, and yet a more noble way of looking at the word would be reality itself. That in fact, the word Dham has the quality of the word foundation. You could go so far as to say that the real foundation is the actual real laws of nature, the law of gravity, the law of electromagnetic forces, nuclear strong and weak forces, the actual thing that puts the world together. Now, in Thailand, they have a word called Dhamma Kai, and the word Dhamma Kai actually means the body of the Dhamma. And we can see then that that would be all of reality itself. And in that regard, we could use the word Dhamma Kai or the word Dhamma in the sense of what is God, because God is real. It's our environment. It's the air we breathe. It's gravity that holds us to the ground. It's the light that we use to be able to see. It's the sound waves that we can hear with, etc., like this. So we are actually immersed into, um, let us call it kind of an ocean of reality. And that ocean that we live in is then the God. And yet you can hear in the ordinary language, the word God has some dude on a cloud, maybe with binoculars watching what you're doing. Some of the Christians think that they have a personal relationship with him when in fact all they're doing is hallucinating. They better have their relationship with God in church rather than in the psychiatric ward. At least church, you can go home. And so the point is that the word God is almost always in our society used in an ordinary way. It's an ordinary word. But in the Dhamma language, we can use the word God to be that which you are in. It's the environment. It's your what contacts you. Your sights, sounds, touches, smells, and your ability to have a mind to think is all part of that reality. Now, another word that we can look at would be the word Sangha. The word Sangha is a common word throughout Buddhism, generally meaning the collection of monks. And when I say collection, I'm using that word specifically to where really Sangha has nothing to do with the collection of monks. What it has to do with is your attitude about the people around you. If you have a noble attitude, that those that are around you are noble, then you'll have Sangha. Otherwise, you're just going to have some sort of conflict with the people around you. So, another word that the Buddhadasa uses is the word eat. When we use the word eat, we think about chewing with the mouth, consuming. And yet another way of looking at the word, when we're looking at it from a noble perspective, is not devouring something, but just letting it in. Just uh, let it come part inside to be absorbed within, as opposed to devouring something. So we can eat in the sense of just experience. So all of these words are used for us to make a choice about whether we're going to see these words and use these words in a noble context so that we can begin to have noble thoughts with noble language, or whether we're going to be using our language in the way that we have been trained throughout all of our lives. Remember that the ordinary language was kind of given to the child as a gift in the sense of a toy, but it winds up blowing up in his face to where we want to keep knives away from children because we don't want them to hurt themselves. And so now then the child is untrained and unskilled in using a language that actually dissects, looks, and takes in consideration exactly what really is. So there's an entire vocabulary of words that we can use. I've only used a few of them. So does anybody have any questions about this? Jesus or Jesus. Good to see you, friend.
Good to see you. Good to see you, Dhammarato. Good to see you all. I'm happy you feel better. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. No, I don't have any questions right now. It's very pretty clear. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, there's not a whole lot that needs to be said about it, but it has the quality that we have to remember what kind of language that we're going to be using. Are we going to be using ordinary language with ordinary people? Or are you going to spend our time with people who can actually understand a noble language? Christopher, do you have anything to say?
Is that me?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm not a Skype user. I only installed this to make an international call to my bank. I'm not sure what my tagline says, but my name is Chris. No, I think the easiest way not to sound smart is to not talk. Not today.
Carl, go ahead.
I was gonna add more on the previous topic what Thomas asked about the love and all the relationship problems that come along down the path. But it's like that. I don't know if you want to talk more about like how you don't need it. Then every argument you will have with the spouse or a wife, it's not gonna be a big deal. But you have to have like it's too much work first kind of attitude, champion's mentality before you can get into any relationship. I feel like.
I'm not quite sure what you're saying. Can you clarify that?
I'm saying when you don't need it, then it needs you more than you need it. Like as soon as you drop this whole issue of needing love and needing relationships, it finds you back again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know what I mean. It's like when you don't want something, everything becomes just like a toy, a gift, a toy to play with, right? We say. So same with relationships. It's just like another kind of toy.
Right. Okay, so here's one of the ways that we can put that, and that is that relationship is all about chasing things. And when you stop chasing things, the things that you were chasing are going to turn around and start chasing you. That everything is a chase in the ordinary life. And that we don't need to be chasing around, that was what we were taught to do. And that we can, in fact, recognize that I'm just out chasing, looking for something, looking for love. In fact, there's a song that I like very much because it's got some quite value by understanding it. And that is the song that says, looking for love in all the wrong places. That in fact, there is no place that you can look for love that's not in the wrong place. Everybody's looking for love. The point would be is that some of them who are looking for love and says, well, you can love yourself. But the Buddha wouldn't say that. What he would say instead is that you're okay, you're all right, you don't need loved. You don't need to be loved. You don't need to love yourself. What you need to do instead is take care of yourself, to nurture yourself, be friends with yourself, but you don't need to love yourself. Yes, geez, go for it.
Yeah, a question about seeing people as nobles, like about the Sangha. If this happens to me, if I am with people that obviously, or I see in my perception, they are not wise, and I had the thought it would be nice if I am with wise people. This is a way to, because I understand this is an unwholesome thought, because I am like preferring to be with one kind of people than the other. But at the same time, it's a wise thought because it's nicer if I change my environment and go with these people. But this feeling of I wish I was. How can I use this like in a wholesome way? Like when I am around my family, for example, and they are not super wholesome. Do you understand what I mean?
Yes. Okay. Here is a way of doing it is that you can see those folks as not noble. And because you can see them as not noble, you treat them as if they are not noble, and then they will prove over and over again to you that they are not noble. Okay, so that's in fact you're taking it and not applying the idea. And the idea then would be that, yes, everything is noble. I am noble. My family is noble. And if I start treating them noble, I will begin to see they too are noble. So if you treat children in a noble, happy way, they'll begin to respond in a noble, happy way. And if you treat them like trash, guess what? They're going to act like trash. So it's actually, the reality is that it's always inside the practitioner is in his mind where the nobility can be found. Now, when you're around other people and you treat them nobly and they don't act nobly, you continue to treat them nobly while you're on your way out. You can go find people who will actually behave nobly when you treat them nobly. And there are quite a number who have been so well trained at being non-noble, ordinary people that no matter how you treat them now, they continue to behave in the habits that they have. And you can see that. But within your family, the right way to handle them is by handling them as if they were noble. Give them credit for what they have, instead of saying that they're not noble and then treating them as if they're not noble so that they prove to you that they're not noble. The right way to handle it is exactly opposite of that, and that is start treating them as noble and then begin to look for signs of nobility within them. And keep your own mind noble. When your mind is noble, everything is noble.
Okay, and if the movement from that environment to a more wholesome, beneficial environment, which is maybe a consequence of a thought of I'm getting out. This getting out is the thing. I don't want to. I would like to find a way to. I'm getting out, but in a not in like a aversion way, not having aversion to the space, and then move to the more wholesome environment. Sorry for my English. I long time I don't speak English.
Okay. One of the important point is that when we're moving out, the moving out in the beginning is your mind. So what we're saying then is that when you are seeing your family as ignoble, they're not acting noble. You want them to behave noble. You act like they're noble, and they continue to show you that they're not noble. Then the way to handle that is to make sure that your mind is noble, to keep coming back to right effort, right noble effort, to put your mind in a really, really good state, and your feet will follow naturally.
Okay, I got it. I got it now. Thank you.
Yeah, it is all about a mental state, a mental attitude that we have about the world and the way that we perceive the world. Instead of perceiving the world the way that we've been taught to perceive the world, ordinarily, we begin to see the world in a noble way, but that takes training. And the training that it takes is basically to catch our own unwholesome, unnoble thoughts and changing them into wholesome, noble thoughts. This is the actual practice of anapanasati. This is actually the practice of the Eightfold Noble Path. Now, when Ajahn Bhikkhu Buddhadasa talked about Dhamma as a noble language word, he actually used it in the sense of the way that we would use the Four Noble Truths, that there is a Dhamma, it exists, and that we have a duty to that Dhamma. If we feel our duty to the Dhamma, then the Dhamma will be noble. And if we do not fulfill our duty to the Dhamma, then it will not be. Now, the interesting point about it is that this teaching about our duty to the Dhamma is exactly the same as the Eightfold Noble Path. We actually, once we learn the Eightfold Noble Path, we actually see we've got a duty to practice the Eightfold Noble Path. And when we don't practice the Eightfold Noble Path, we get punished by the reality of our own manufactured dukkha. And when we practice the Eightfold Noble Path, that means that we're actually, in a way, fulfilling our duty to the Dhamma. And by fulfilling our duty to the Dhamma, that makes the Dhamma noble. And so this is an important point. Bhikkhu Buddhadasa spoke about this quite often. We all have a duty to the Dhamma. Now, in reality, we have a duty in our ordinary world. The world is full of ordinary duties that we have. We have duty, for instance, to treat the police with respect. And if you don't do your duty to the Dhamma, you're going to wind up with your face in the dirt and your hands behind you. If you do not fulfill your duty to the Dhamma in the sense of breathing, you'll run out of breath. So we have all these little duties that we have in reality that are ordinary. Let's start recognizing that we have some noble duties. And the noble duty is to practice the Eightfold Noble Path. We actually have a duty to become noble. It's a duty. And if we don't perform our duty, guess what? We're, let us say, imprisoned by and have to put up with the reality of that our reality is not noble. It's ordinary. You become an ordinary person again because we're not practicing the noble Dhamma. We have a responsibility. We have an actual duty to it. Now, to be honest, when I first heard about this duty to the Dhamma, I wanted to rebel. What, me? I don't have any duties to the Dhamma. I'm having too much fun here. Not recognizing, and in fact, that we do have a duty. that you have all kinds of duties, and that the important one in this regard of being noble is that you actually have a duty to become noble. And when you practice your responsibility of becoming noble, you get the fruit or the benefit of your own practice, and that the mind becomes noble. And so this is an important point that we can say is that we can start keeping track of the language that we use mentally, so that we can then intentionally bring our mind into a noble state, because we have a duty to make the mind noble. And when we don't fulfill our duty, then we're back into the ordinary world with all the problems that brought you to this talk today. So, who we got? Ben, what do you think?
All makes sense. Yeah, I'm happy. I have a comment when you said about I've heard before, like you don't have to work to eat. I was watching a documentary on Zen Buddhism the other day, and they do live a sort of subsistence lifestyle. Like they grow their own food, and they've got a rule where if you don't work, you can't eat that day.
Well, someone there at that temple is making ordinary rules for ordinary people. And yet I imagine that if someone is sick, they're not going to be, let us say, deprived of food, are they? No, this is actually a training rule. And that the problem with the Dhamma is that almost all of the training rules and almost all of the watts are ordinary training rules, teaching the kids to do ordinary things, and they never wind up becoming noble. That in fact, possibly the right thing to do is for all of the monks just to stop growing the vegetables. Let the vegetables grow all by themselves. I think gardens are generally too well tended. A lot of the work of a farmer is make work. You got to stay busy. And in fact, that's the wonderful thing about grass and crops is that they actually grow by themselves pretty much. And so we are actually then, most of the monasteries that you'll find throughout the world are populated by ordinary people who are striving to become noble without even knowing how to do that. Being taught how to become noble by teachers who don't know how to be noble. That we're actually very fortunate to have had a teacher like Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, who began to understand what real nobility is, rather than doing what you're told to do and getting a pat on the head, my, what a good boy you are, which is the way that a lot of the watts operate. Oh, if you follow all the rules and you get it just right, then you're a good monk. And yet the people who brew that are generally just ordinary people doing what they were told to do, still looking for enlightenment, to where in fact they could have been enlightened all along. By changing their attitude from that ordinary, I've got to get the job done because I was told to do it, into, I'm okay. Whether I do the work or not, I'm still okay. Let's look at it in a very, very large way. Notice how much technology has happened in the past 100 years. From electronics, vacuum tubes, transmitters, short waves, spark gap transmitters, and all of that kind of stuff in the early days, up through transistors, and then mainframe computers, and then into PCs, and then into cell phones, and all of this technology that's happened in the past 100 years. Look how much technology has happened, and look at how many people have become noble because of it. Nobody. An interesting way of looking at it is that way back when humans were using stones to break open the bones of the dead carcasses after the lions had finished with it to get the marrow out. And one of these dudes finds a really, really sharp, special kind of stone that can cut through that bone quickly so that he can get right to the marrow. And what does he do? He picks up that stone and he carries it with him. He loves that stone. He makes a pocket for it. He loves that stone, and so he attaches a stick to it and makes the first axe. And he carries that thing around with him until it's 2024, and we call that axe that he picked up a cell phone. No real mental change has happened. The only thing that's changed is the technology that we rely upon. And when he loses that stone axe, or if you lose your cell phone, what happens? You feel bad. So what's the point? The point about society and the point about all of this stuff that we've picked up and we've learned and all of this technology hasn't really made anybody happy, because we're not practicing to become happy. We're practicing to be technologically proficient. So we need to change our mentality from, oh, I need a new iPhone, or, oh, I need new memory, more memory in my computer, etc., like that, into, I'm already okay. Everything is already fine. So we actually have to remember to practice being noble, because look at how much technology and how much we have in our society that is teaching you, oh, you got to do it society's way. And the society's way is just more dukkha. And so this is why Bhikkhu Buddhadasa mentions this idea of this concept of, let's look at the kind of language that we're using, because almost all the language that we've been using is not liberating. It may make you a technological expert, but you're going to be a same old miserable technological expert. The question is can you change your mind? Can you change your attitude? Can you change from being an ordinary person to a noble person, when you, in fact, you're generally surrounded by all these ordinary people who don't even have a clue about how to work to become noble, which is what Jesus is talking about. So when your family, Jesus, is not noble, guess whose mind sees them as not noble? Where is the nobility in that? So this is the way that we begin to understand things, is that we have to get our own mind straightened out. We have to get the unwholesome thoughts out of the mind and bring happy, wholesome, noble thoughts in over and over and over and over and over again. Just as kind of an example, let me give you this kind of question. How many thoughts of want, desire, confusion, unwholesome thoughts, how many unwholesome thoughts have you had in your life? About 10 or so a minute, every minute of your life? Pretty large number. Which means now that we actually have to practice having a whole lot of one after another wholesome thoughts, just to kind of make up for all of the unwholesome thoughts that we've been taught. Go ahead, Ivan.
Oh no, Dhammarato. I was just trying to say, I realized my sense of self shift very quickly when when I'm around quote unquote not noble people. It's like not sure. Very quickly, like there can be unwholesome speech, or just unwholesome thoughts. But I know that's not me. Like that's just the old me. But it comes out so quickly. Like yeah, that's. I mean, I'm not sure what I'm trying to say. It's just kind of frustrating when I think about it, I guess.
You're actually bringing up a really important point, and that is that conventional language, ordinary language, is language about self. It's about me. It's about my desire, my relationships, my wanting love in all the wrong places. It's about selfishness. And noble-minded. In fact, Jesus, back to the point of you're noble, but your family is not noble. You want them to be noble. Your non-nobility is dealing with what you're seeing is not noble. But if you can get your mind into a state of nobility, then you're treating all of your family as if they were also noble. And so this is the whole thing is that we can come out of our selfishness, come out of our selfish desires. Oh, I want my family to be noble, so I don't have to work so hard. Oh, I want the people around me to be noble, so I don't have to work so hard to try to see them as noble when in fact I know they're not. That's our own lack of nobility. So we have to keep practicing over and over and over again, remembering that we've had 1 million or more unwholesome thoughts in our lifetime. Now it's time to start practicing having some happy, wholesome thoughts. One after another, until there's nothing left to think about. Everything is okay. Everything is just fine. No work to be done, because all the work that needed to be done has been done. And what is that? The only job that you have to do is to make your mind mobile. That's the only job you've got. The only job that you'll ever have is to make your mind noble. And guess what? That only takes 1/10 of a second. Right bloody now. Make it noble. You might have to do that again later, but that's okay. I can do that. When the time comes, I'll remember, and it'll become noble right then. And so we practice over and over and over again. Everything is all right. Everything is fine. Not a problem, not a worry in the world. But we have to practice being noble, knowing that most of the people around us have not a clue about how to practice. But that doesn't mean that we have to have the attitude that they're not good enough because they're not practicing, because that, in fact, is taking our own nobility away in order to see them as not noble. So the question is, and this is a tough one, can you actually remain in a noble state, see that they're not noble, treat them as if they were noble, and continue on like that? Or do you have to become disappointed because you see that they're not noble? Can you actually say, it's okay with me that they're not noble? Then in fact, I'm the one who's calling them not noble.
Yeah,
You're the one who's calling them not noble. Yes, Jesus, go ahead.
yeah. This is very interesting because so if I see the unwholesomeness of actions of myself or other people, and I think I'm out of here. So the I'm out of here is the thing I like makes me feel sometimes is I am rejecting them or what you said, I'm making my mind noble and my feet are following. Sometimes I doubt. I mean, when this is the thing. It's like if I'm gonna, because I have thoughts of ordaining next year. I'm thinking, am I just escaping this, or I am like, this is sometimes the doubt I have. Like, I am out of here. When I say I'm out of here, what I mean with that, this is the.
Mm-hmm. Well, if it's the way that you're saying, I'm out of here, that means that my selfishness is being removed from the situation, leaving nothing but the emptiness of nobility. Take the I out. I'm out of here.
Oh.
Oh.
Oh. Okay. It clicked now. Thank you. Okay. All right.
So excellent. I'm glad to see that it's clicking for you. It takes a while. This stuff is subtle. The Buddha says it is profound. It's difficult to discern. But we have to keep practicing by seeing one unwholesome thought after another and removing it. And pretty soon we can begin to see the subtleties of the thoughts that we thought were wholesome were in fact just more judgmental thoughts.
This is very nice. Thank you very much for that. Yeah. Thank you.
So, Ross, do you have anything to say?
I suppose. Sorry, I don't know if it's noisy in the background. Hopefully, you can hear me. I think one thing that I have learned from coming to your calls is the power of language and how that helps you reframe things in your mind so you can, be better in your practice, I suppose, become more skillful. A lot of words that I've used in the past, I've kind of changed, and it's been very, very helpful. Yeah, it kind of resonates me what we're talking about. The other thing I want to say is, I think Ben spoke before about the quote about a day without work is a day without food. The person who is attributed to is a person called Baijun Huaihai, who's actually born in the district that I live in. His temple's quite near where his ordination temple is near where I actually live. But I think a lot of that became because of the culture in China where they didn't really do alms rounds anymore. So they had no access to food from the laity a lot, and it was quite difficult where they had their monasteries. It wasn't close to people. Maybe the term that he said, I agree, it's not very well phrased, but you can take joy in that sort of work as well. I think have the right approach to the practice. I just thought I'd mention that because it's close to me.
Yes, I would say that if the monks in a foreign society, whether it was in China or Japan or even modern Europe nowadays, the problem is not that the monks go on bendabat and get nothing. The problem is that they don't continue to go on bendabat and get nothing. If they continue to go on bendabat and get nothing over and over and over again, day after day after day after day, pretty soon they begin to get some stuff. but they quit too early. That's what happens with the monks in the United States. In fact, we have been on Bendabat. I was surprised that they stopped doing it. What we did was we early in the morning at about 7 a.m. on a regular work day, they parked the car in a regular parking place within a block of, I think it's either Trade or Tryon, the main drag. And we walked up and down. And basically, when we would get in Bendabat area of a Dunkin' Donut or a 7-Eleven or something like that on the street, people would go in and get stuff and give it to us. And so that's the problem is that in China, they didn't keep going out. They said, oh, we've got to grow our own food because nobody's giving us anything. Then, in fact, they were not treating their fellow Chinese as noble. If we start treating all of these people on the street as noble, they'll begin to behave noble. If we have the idea, oh, I can't get any food from them, we've got to go grow our own, then where's the nobility in that one?
I think the people do make donations, they just go to the temple to do it. But I am struggling to understand myself what is better about going on an alms round and growing your own food. Like why? Like what's more noble about that?
Well, the noble of going on alms round is that you get enough for you to carry or less. None of the guys that are on our normal group here are on, but Kat and David go on Bendabat over at Watsu and Milk on a regular basis, and Kat's gotten kind of used to it. I got used to it. I got used to getting a tiny little fish that was half eaten, and all you saw was the skeleton of the fish, half eaten bananas, and other things like this. But when the mind becomes noble, then we can do with what food is there. And so recognize that in most cases, the Watts throughout the world are not practicing nobly. If we started practicing nobly, the Dhamma would grow and swell greatly. Now, I do know and recognize that there's 400 million people in the world who are Buddhist, but that's an ordinary kind of Buddhism. There's not a lot of nobility there. We, in fact, have the mentality that nobility is rare. Gosh, you're not going to see a whole group of enlightened monks walking down the street. You'd be lucky if all of those monks walking down the street have ever actually seen an enlightened one. What kind of noble thought is that? So begin to have your own noble thoughts. Begin to see that everything is actually already okay, that your family is noble, etc. Go ahead, Christopher.
Yeah, so not to take anything away from gardening, which can be a beautiful thing, but if you've never done Bendapat on a regular basis, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. And I've been out in the forest all day, trying to find a place that's not crawling with humans. And I was thinking about some related stuff as I was looking for a place with solitude. And that is, I have caught myself before when lay people ask me why I became a monk, feeling guilty that I left society, that I ran away, that I gave up, that it was a cowardly thing to do. But if I look at those people that are in the hills, the people that feed me every morning, they're out there picking tea leaves. They don't, as far as I can tell, not many people, there are a few hundred people in the village around me. Not many people have like a real job. They don't have the pressures of the stuff I used to have to put up with, the nonsense. They just get up and walk off into the woods and pick enough tea leaves to get by. And that, with a lot of generational knowledge about how to live off the land, I don't feel guilty at all anymore when I look at that. Like, you don't have to work. They tricked you. They tricked you. So I agree.
Exactly so. And so when you're having those kind of thoughts of, oh, well, I'm just escaping from the world by becoming a monk, the answer to the correct and right answer is, yeah, that's right. Let me out of here. Okay, so it's not a matter of leaving the world to become a monk. It's what kind of attitude do you have doing it? And over time, you've developed the right attitude, but it took some time because you were dealing with those thoughts that sometimes other people are giving you is that, oh, you just quit. You're not living up to the obligations of society. And the answer to that is that society is not worth living up to. In fact, if we're going to live up to something, let's live up to something that's worth living up to. Having a noble mind, it's clean. So congratulations, Christopher. You've gotten over that hump.
I mean, literally, alms round is more often than not the most beautiful part of my day. It's a beautiful thing.
Well, another way of saying it is that when you're really practicing well, it's the only part of your day. Everything else is just nothing there. So, Thomas, you had your hand up for a moment a little while ago.
Yeah, I was going to say too that I think with solitude and seclusion, etc., there's a little bit of crab in the bucket mentality in society. So yeah, they may say, "Oh, you're giving up," but I've also heard, "Oh, that's so brave. That's how can you be alone? Oh, that's impossible." So one way or the other, it's something or either unbelievable, impossible, too brave, too difficult, or too easy. You are giving up on society, but there's that push always that no, you can't do that. You can't do that. Well, yeah, I can. As a matter of fact, I can and I do. So
Yes,
I agree with the
exactly.
point. There are both
Isn't
ways
that
of saying,
funny?
no, you can't do that.
Within society, you'll have a yes coming from the left, and you'll have a yes coming from the right, and you'll have a no coming from the left and a no coming from the right. It's a hodgepodge. It's all over the place. But very little of it is noble. They don't see that becoming a monk is a noble thing to do to get away from the society. All of those people who will criticize you and look at you about being a monk, they're doing it from within their mindset of being in society. They can't see you and they can't see themselves as removing yourself from the society that is not noble and coming into a state of mentally being noble. Like I said, there's 400 million Buddhists, and there's very few nobles there. They bring the society with them. The Buddha that they have is an ordinary Buddha, not a noble Buddha. So we have to start practicing to make our thoughts noble, to make our Buddhahood noble Buddha. This is the way that we do it over and over and over again. So, guys, why don't we go ahead and finish now? I think that we've kind of gotten the point. Does anybody have any last things to say? All right, so Mikey, why don't you take it home?
Yeah, thank you everyone for being here today. It's great to see so many happy, smiling friends on this Sangha call. If you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on your favorite podcast platform as well. And it really helps the channel when you leave a like and comment on our videos. And also, if you haven't yet, please go ahead and sign up for OpenSanghaFoundation.org. Things have really come together on the website. We've been mostly fixing bugs and addressing security issues, things like that. So if you happen to come across something that's not working, please let us know. And go have fun on the site. Add a profile picture, message some friends, create a blog post. Have a ball. Thank you, everyone.
Comment, take a poll, take the survey, write your own poll. This is very, very oriented towards people being interactive. This is not the normal website to where they expect you to read what they've written, but this is a very highly interactive website so that we expect you to build your own content. Write your own posts, write your own comments, add your own photos, make your messages, get to become friends with one another. This is what it's all about, and the messaging system seems to be working very well. So have at it, folks. Have a noble, happy old time.
Thank you. Thank you,
All
everyone.
right. So thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank
May
you.
your
Bye.
language be noble.
Dhammarato.